The Thomas Tuchel era as England boss is officially underway, and we got off to the perfect start with a 2-0 win, of course, at home to Albania. But today we are having the debate all things England. Can we finally win the big one? Is Tuchel the right man? And what do we think he needs to do to get England over that final hurdle? Also, we'll be talking what players we'd like to see in the team and ultimately what he needs to do differently. Let's kick things off. Reece, let's talk about what we think success looks like. Now, that may be an obvious question, but is the job for Tuchel black and white? Is it literally win a trophy and anything else is failure? Or do we think it's a little bit more complex than that?
Arguably, every manager's brief is to win. Win games, you win trophies. That's quite simple and straightforward, and that's what he will have. However, he's only here for 18 months, so we're led to believe, meaning he's got to at least lay the foundations. We've made the final of 2 Euros back to back, lost them both. We didn't make a final of a World Cup, but we made a semi-final of a World Cup. So I suppose his idea is to at least get further than that. But ultimately, I think they should be in a position to win a trophy by 2026. So,
Jamie, do you agree on that? Or do you think it is a little bit more complicated than just win or fail?
Well, look, at the end of the day, winning is what is success. History books will remember if you win stuff. So in terms of that, in looking at it very narrowly, I think, yes, it is. But even with Southgate being so close, he's couldn't get much closer, losing penalty shootouts and losing sort of finals. It's sort of like we still were very critical of him. So I don't think it is just winning a trophy that sort of could be looked on, at least on a good light, of Thomas Tuchel as England manager. I think the problem we've had with Southgate is he was boring, pretty much. I'm not going to mince my words. He was a dull manager to be a part of watching. When, if you look at the players that we got, they're an exciting bunch of players that are very good, and we've seen nearly all of them in the squad be quality for their club. So I think if Tuchel brings in a much more attacking and sort of enjoyable sort of, tactics, and we're watching the game, we're seeing free flowing stuff, then it will be more enjoyable. But I do think it is difficult because when they have friendlies, when they have these games where we're playing Albania, Latvia, whoever, they're not exciting games. The time it gets exciting is the Euros, is the World Cup. And that's the problem he's got, is he can be boring in the qualifiers, but if he's exciting in the World Cup and Euros, it will be reflected on better on him. So it is difficult, but I think successful means he wins a trophy, unfortunately, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and look, I don't buy into this nonsense of exciting football. Like, you want to win trophies, and teams that play exciting football do not win trophies. It's really that straightforward. It's about game management. Game management will be boring. It's not the most exciting, and I think Tuchel has that edge with game management. I think he will be better at it than Southgate was. I think he's already hit the nail on the head. England were afraid of failure, and we did see that. So he's already offered something a little bit different. Albania were not a rubbish side. They did well in the Euros. They didn't exactly blow anyone away, but they were hard to beat, and we went and beat them quite comfortably, regardless of what type of game this was or not. There were positive signs, and I think he's shown something. Look, I wasn't blown away by Tuchel at club level. I wasn't. I think he won the Champions League. No disrespect, but he won the Champions League off a new manager bounce, and scraped the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich against one of the worst Dortmund sides ever. So this is a chance of redemption for him. I think he might be suited better to international level, and so far, 1 game, 1 win. So I can't knock it.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is it is win a trophy or it's failure. Like, I don't think there's any Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to happen in these 18 months. I think that's the key point. You can't say to someone, if you know, win the World Cup or you're a complete and utter failure. I think that's unfair. But I think we should give him 2 or 3 tournaments, and if he doesn't win a trophy, then we review and assess the situation. I think for me, he is the right man. He's better as a tournament coach, so I think he actually suits the role perfectly. To your point though, it's like you look at the games we're playing. We're playing Albania. We're obviously filming this before the Latvia game. You know, Andorra, Serbia. You know, none of these games are exciting teams. So it's like, what do we actually expect from him? So for me, I think in these games, it's just about trying to find your best 11, trying to find a formation that works, and then moving forward from there. But I do think he's the right man. But at the end of the day, Southgate got close, and people will remember Southgate as a nearly man, and that's the problem. In terms of what he does, obviously we touched on Southgate. What do we think he needs to do differently? What do we think Tuchel needs to do differently from Southgate and from anyone who went before him? Because I think one thing I want to touch on is listening to the noise. And I think in an England role, that is almost impossible to not do. You know, to ignore the noise is impossible. But I think Southgate at times was a little bit, I'm trying to think of the right term, but I feel like he played into the media's hands a bit too much, or was a bit soft in his approach. And I actually think Tuchel needs to be different to that. What do you guys think on that? Do you agree, or do you think Southgate was the right man in that sense in terms of keeping the media happy and all the rest?
What do you mean by soft, though? Like, just to go off your point there before I sort of say mine.
Well, all right, let me give you a better example. After the game the other day, so after the Albania win, Tuchel in the interview kind of low-key slated Rashford and Foden, because he said, he didn't directly say, oh, they were terrible, but what he did come out and say was, we didn't get enough from our wide men. We were too central. All the attacks came from the middle. So we need more impact from the wide men. That would have never happened. And that's game one. That would have never happened under Southgate. Southgate would have not implied players have underperformed. He would keep everyone happy and be like, the team this, the team that. Whereas Tuchel's pretty much gone in. He's not slated them, but it's a different approach. And I think that is what he needs to do differently. And I think that's important. Not take a softer approach and just be honest.
Okay, so you want him to be truthful pretty much in what he thinks, what he's saying, which I can understand where you're coming from, because sometimes you see it with club level. Sometimes a player needs to be called out for not performing well enough. And sometimes you need to put your arm around him, protect him from the media, because being an England player is terrible in terms of the media you're going to get. Because unless you go and win the tournament, you'll probably be more slated than you'll be praised. So it is difficult in that aspect. And I think, yeah, the odd sort of comment going, I think he could have done this better, that better, probably would help England fans. But I also don't want him to listen to us. If you listen to the England fans, they would have started. Basically, if you asked, people had different opinions on who the front three should be, and you can never win. So I think you have to be like, thanks for your opinion in his own little mind. Don't actually say it, but he's got to do it his own way, because you can't listen to England fans. You know, we're all very fickle. We still have our club sort of, loyalty. I just think listening to the English and the media and the public is a terrible idea. I really do. So I wouldn't listen to us. What he needs to do differently, though, I think it's just on the pitch. It's showing on the pitch, showing that you don't want to play with 2 sort of CDMs in the group stage versus Slovakia or Slovenia, whoever it was. It's showing that we're going to beat teams. Teams are going to be worried playing us for sort of constantly, and not think we're going to be a defensive side that's very solid. I want to be a bit more excited. I want to celebrate several goals. I want beer thrown everywhere in the Euros, in the World Cup. That's what I want, is to be excited, because Southgate's tried the sort of boring way, and unfortunately he's come up short. He's got just short, but he has come up short. And then you're watching it going, well, that was disappointing completely. Because I think in the last Euros, our best 45 minutes was when we played attacking football. I think it was against the Dutch. I think we played very good football for the first half. But other than that, I was never really entertained by the way England played football.
I think one thing to bring up that is look, we all called Southgate boring, right? But at the end of the day, he was minutes away, or a game away from winning the Euros. So although the entertainment value is important, at the end of the day, if Southgate had won us the Euros, we wouldn't care. So I think that is still a hard kind of situation to navigate, because we're all saying Southgate in the end will ultimately be remembered by a lot of people for boring football, which is obviously such a shame considering how well he did and how much he brought us forward. But it doesn't matter if you win. No one would have ever said Southgate was boring if we won that Euros. He'd be an absolute legend, an icon, and all the rest of it. So I don't know.
I still think he would have been called boring. I still think it would have been called boring, but the boring way won, and you're happy with that. But you remember, Spain won the tournament. Spain were one of the most exciting sides in the tournament. So you can win it and be exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, look, we can't read too much into, this game. This game provides a platform for him to learn and what he wants to do next. I agree, he was probably right to make those comments about, Rashford. To hope they do better. If they don't, he will drop them. I believe he's that kind of coach. He will drop them. He's not afraid to do that. He gave them a chance, and if they don't prove their worth, then he will drop them. I think he's a bit more ruthless in that area. Of course, he's got the likes of Saka to come back, which will be, I'm sure, but again, will be a test for him to see how he works in that system. But it's a good result. It's a good win, and it's a platform to provide. I think he's obviously being outspoken like that can ultimately lead to a downfall at times, but he's got the result. His big downfall for me, particularly at Chelsea, was that he lost to teams he should have beaten quite a lot, and that was my big criticism of him. And he was able to sort of do all right against the better sides. Our downfall under Southgate was that we beat the teams we should beat, and when it comes to the teams that were the challenge, we couldn't beat them. So hopefully this turns on its head, because when you go to the World Cup, you're going to be playing teams that are better than you. So it's getting past those. We're going to cruise to qualify. There's no doubt about that. And how he performs in these will be interesting to see who he picks, how he experiments, and go with that. Because obviously we saw, Lewis Skelly had a good start, but it's up to him to prove his worth in that position. He's got another year and a bit to see what he can get out of these players. And he's also got to handle the media too, because I think the media will be constantly scrutinising with this nonsense that he's German, etc. They'll chew him up and spit him out. Newsflash, people, the German fans do not care about England or see them as a rival, so just get over it. I think everyone's already digging in after one game, but he's done exactly what he was supposed to do. He's done a good job. Like I said, there's no point going into win games 6-0, 7-0, because that doesn't win you trophies, or teams don't perform like that to win trophies. They have to know when to dig in and get the result when it matters.
Yeah, I think one thing to add in terms of doing it differently from other managers, for me, is the team leagues. Like, Tuchel is a tactical guy, and I think he will give us that edge that Southgate didn't, as you mentioned, in the big games. But this consistent problem of team leaks hours or days before the games has to stop. Like, why is it happening? I don't understand. Is it someone in the camp leaking this? Is it just the media with England just get more access to what, training sessions or whatever? But whatever it is, it's got to stop, because in a World Cup final, in a Euros final, the tactical makeup of a game wins you find when it's not just international football, every single level of this game, on the biggest nights, the tactical battle is the one that's going to win you finals and trophies. So having a team leaked a day or an hour or not an hour, sorry, but it was like, consistently for Euro games, it would be the games at 8 o'clock in the evening. We know the lineup at midday. So if we know the lineup at midday and the world knows the lineup at midday, it means the opposition know the lineup at midday and can change their tactics to adapt. And it's just such a competitive disadvantage. I don't understand it. But somehow, some way, he has to get a grip on that and stop it from happening. Because I don't think we're going to win trophies if, as I said, the world knows our formation and our tactics before a game with enough time to absolutely change and go against it. I just don't understand.
No, that's a fair point, to be honest. We knew the team at least 24 hours before nearly every game in the Euros, which is ridiculous considering the games come round every, 3-4 days. So it was stupid to do it. I think it was a leak within someone, a player, a coach. I do think it was. It does need to stop. And if you can't make it, you've got to find who's doing it, really. And basically, like, you just get rid of them from the squad, because I don't care who it is. Like, we're going to mention some players are essential. If it's one of them, get them gone, because it shouldn't be. You shouldn't be doing it, plain and simple. Because, and I agree, it will impact how well you do. Because if I know the team 24 hours before, I pretty much knew what tactics were going to come out from Southgate. So I know he did get through to the final, and like, we were close. But things like that just shouldn't happen at all. Don't care if it's club level or international level.
It doesn't happen at club level, I think. That's the weird thing. I don't know.
To be honest, I'm not going to. I don't know if it is any English player, but I've seen it at United. United have had a few where there's been rumours going around, leaks. It's not just team news. There's problems in the dressing room. There's XYZ sort of under Ten Hag. There's been one or two still under Amorim. It happened with Solskjaer. So there are problems. I'm not saying it's a United player in the England squad that's doing it. I'm just saying I have seen it at club level, and you do get some of these rumours coming out. So, but with the England, it's sort of the tournament's so heavily involved, it's seen more often, just because it's every couple of days.
Yeah.
It's a bit much. Like, I do agree, it's stamping down on it. Whoever's doing it, whether they're getting it, for a few quid or whatever, it's not an issue. But I suppose you can investigate it and try and clamp down on it. If it's a player, once you admit them, you'll probably see that the leaks stop. Then therefore you can work that out.
Get a Vardy, Rooney,
Rooney on the
case, Rebecca Vardy and stuff. Get that scenario in it. Fake team news to one person. See if it goes out.
But it is one of those things. I do think it's quite disruptive, because it's like, yeah, fair enough. Like, if you're just somebody who's working there and you get the team news, you get a couple of £100. Good luck to you. Because realistically, you're not going to have that emotional attachment thing as national team. Then you probably do your club team. But yeah, you got to weed it out and stop it. I know sometimes they're inevitable, but I'd also like to think that Tuchel's probably more than tactical enough to change and adapt when things are thrown his way.
Yeah, I don't think he'll like that at all, by the way. I think he's more than capable of clamping it out. And I think he will want to clamp that out as well. Because we know that's what wins finals, as I said. Let's move on to players now. We've obviously all got our own club favourites, so I guess we can get those out of the way early. But what players do we honestly believe are essential to winning, the World Cup, the Euros? Who do we think are essentially must-pick players for Tuchel?
I'll start with the bias, because I think it is factual, and that's John Stones. If Stones is fit, Stones starts, and he's the best England centre-back we have. This will be his last tournament, I think. His injuries are just not holding up. I'm seeing it at City. He's barely playing. He's getting maybe 20 games a season at best. and so that's a big problem. But if Stones is fit, Stones has to start because I think he's a few levels above the rest of the centre backs we have there.
Yeah, and then I guess midfield, in terms of options, I think it has to be Rice. Just in terms of, I don't think we have a player close to him as CDM personally, and that might be harsh, but he feels like untouchable almost in that position. And I think there's a lot of other midfielders that it feels like you could argue are interchangeable. I think for me, yeah, Stones, yes, but I think Rice is more important because there's other centre backs who are up and coming. I think Rice is probably the player that you look at and go, there's not really another Rice in that team. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I think ultimately we'll see who are his key players. Whether he picks them off their club domestic form or not is, remains to be seen. I do think Declan Rice will have a role to play. I personally think the midfield at the very least is going to be built around Bellingham. I think he's pretty much made that clear. He is the poster boy of England at this moment in time, whether we agree with his performances or not. I see quite a lot of leadership in him, so I think Tuchel will use him to full effect. Kane, of course, is inevitable. I think it's just going to be interesting to see what he does with the older players, the Kyle Walkers, the Jordan Hendersons. Is he going to phase them out and bring in new youth? And of course, we expect Saka to be a key part if he continues to perform as well. But going back to your point, yeah, I think Declan Rice will probably be critical to this. He performs consistently at club level, and I think he performs consistently at international level. So why wouldn't you want a player like that in your team?
Yeah, I think Rice is obviously he's the bookie's favourite to be picked for the World Cup squad. I think that sort of says it all. He's number one. All the odds are quite low. It's like 1 to 20 or something like that odds on. So it's quite certain he will be picked. One thing about him that I sort of, if Tuchel can get him to pass forward more, it'll be brilliant for England in the World Cup. That's the only thing that frustrated me in the Euros. He just lacked sometimes where it was to Bellingham, Saka, Foden, whoever was playing. There was just sometimes he could have just taken that 5% more risk, played that ball, and we could have been through in better sort of scenarios. So that's what I'd want him to do, and that's what I want Tuchel to get out of him, really. Bellingham will be massively involved. I still believe he is overrated, but doesn't mean he's not a good player. So he will definitely be in this squad, and he's showing that, well, being at Real Madrid, you become a winner. And he's already done that. And you need winners in the squad. The older players, like you mentioned, Reece, I understand why they're in the first squad, these sort of 2 games, because Tuchel's got to come in there and he's going to be like, right, Henderson, Walker, what normally goes on? Because they can rat out these sort of younger players being like, he's lazy in training, he does this, he does that, because there's not going to be much backfire on them. And I think it's just to get a bit of experience, tell me what's going on, because they should be able to see it as the experienced players. But I don't see either of them, Walker and Henderson, definitely not starting. Barring injuries, I wouldn't want either of them in the squad for the World Cup. Walker's really fallen off it. And Henderson, I think, he's definitely past his prime, and I just wouldn't want either of them in the squad. I think that's a step backwards rather than a step forwards. So yeah, I wouldn't want them to see him in the squad, to be honest. But I don't mind them in this first squad pick, just to get that experience, see what they think with it all.
Well, in that case, then here are 2 questions, because this does impact in a way Walker's position where he plays on the pitch. So the first one is, what do we make of the likes of Dan Burn? He got his first call up. Is he a player you think he's going to be kept around? I personally think you're going to get someone who's going to give you 110%, and his height will certainly be useful if you need to bring on someone for set pieces. And also, what about Ben White? Do we see him coming back into the fold?
I think on Dan Burn, he's a player I'd like to see. I think, as you said, he's one of those players. He's not going to give you any BS. He's not going to give you any drama. He will do the job wherever on the pitch you tell him. He'll do it well, and he is a constant threat from corners. We've seen it in the cup final. We saw it the other day in the game. He gives us something different. And as we know, as we've said before, the centre-backs are not clear. We know he can play left as well, but we'll see how that plays out. But the centre-backs are not nailed on, I would argue. So I'd love to see Dan Burn continue to be in this squad and hopefully make it through. On Ben White, no is my honest answer. I don't want to see him in the team. One, we don't need him. You've got Trent, you've got James, even arguably Walker in that position. And that's leaving out a few other potential right backs as well. And any player who turns down the chance to play for England does not deserve to be in the England squad. I don't care about the politics. I don't care about any of that stuff. So for me, the arrogance Ben White has previously shown, keep him way out of this squad.
Dan Burn, I'm torn on it, to be perfectly honest. I think it might be, I don't mind him as a squad player. I don't want him starting. He'd be great to throw on, whether we're 1-0 up in a game with 5 minutes left and we're struggling a bit, or 1-0 down. And you go what? We're going to be lumping it a bit long. Get him up top to win them headers, because he's going to win headers against majority of defenders just based off his height. I don't think I want him starting though. I don't think I would. And then onto sort of Ben White. It's a difficult one. I think I disagree with Jordan that we don't need him. We might not need him in the right back position, but he can play centre back and he can play it pretty well. So he could be useful. And like I said, Stone's injury problems, it's sort of like, I don't think there's too much quality in centre back. So I personally don't have much of a problem with it, to be honest, if he comes back. It'll be sort of I think it's Tuchel's biggest call at the moment. It's sort of on him on how he wants to do it. He can make Ben White do an interview where he sort of basically just says sorry. Don't get him to go into the details of it. You don't want all that hashed out. Get him to do a small interview. He'll say, look, there was other circumstances. I do want to play for England. Just get him to do a small little interview like that. Gets the press sort of, okay, he does want to play for England, blah, blah, blah. Make it, it's going to be a load of crap kind of thing. You get someone to read it out write it for you and say it, but do something like that. And I think everyone would just forget it. Because let's be honest, Jordan, I know you're saying you don't want him to do it, but let's say he scores the winner in the semi-final to get us into the final. Let's say not even winning it. You're going to be throwing your beer around, celebrating, going, what a goal, even. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I just want people to want to be there. Like that concerns me. And if it's a big game, that would concern me. But I think you're right. If that circumstance happened, he apologised, explained it very quickly, and as long as there's no drama off the back of it, then yeah, it doesn't really matter.
It just on that, like, I will say, I agree. It's probably his biggest call. Will he bring Ben White or not, or call up Ben White, so to speak? It's irrelevant what's gone on in the previous regime. It really is. We don't know what's happened. And he's refused to play for whatever reason. I doubt it's anything minor, I think whatever's gone on has gone on, and that doesn't mean he doesn't want to play for England, so to speak. He just didn't want to be there for whatever that reason is. And this is a clean slate for Tuchel. There's no issue between Tuchel and Ben White, as far as I know. And I think you've got somebody who's consistently performed as one of the best right backs, bearing in mind he's originally a centre back. So he can play in both positions. And you say about, of course, taking Reece James, but he's much fitter than Reece James. Reece James is world class. I will admit that. But if he doesn't play, then why would you take him if someone gets injured when Ben White will be there? I think Ben White will be called up. I think he will. But he's got to perform consistently as well in the league. There's no point him having a stinker and then taking him. That just makes everything obsolete. But I think, I don't think he has to come out and apologise or anything. I think he'll show that on the pitch. But I think he's a good pick for where they are now. I think he was a good pick for Southgate, but that obviously meant he couldn't do it. So,
all right. Well, let's wrap up with our predictions then. Let's ask the ultimate question. Do we think Tuchel is going to be the man to finally lift a trophy with England?
No. I think it's the same group of. It's a good group of players. Don't get me wrong. I don't think we're not going to get knocked out. I still think there are better teams than us overall, and barring that quite a few teams blow up, I think we still haven't got quite what it takes. It's a mentality issue as well. There'll be things that go wrong, and I just don't see us winning it, to be honest.
Reece?
It's hard to say from 18 months or so from now. I think we thrive when we're kept under the radar. I think we need to keep it at that, keep the expectations relatively calm, not overhype things, which in football there is a very guilty verdict of doing. At this moment in time, I don't see any standout teams which can play to our advantage. Spain, probably because they're the Euro winners, but I still don't think they're the greatest team I've seen. I think Germany are a bit all over the place. Italy are all over the place. I think at the moment they're not as strong. So even from a European perspective, we're going in there as probably the best team if we keep consistent under Tuchel. But I just don't know from 18 months from now. I think we genuinely have a better chance. And I genuinely wrote us off all the time under Southgate saying we wouldn't win because I just couldn't think we could do it when it mattered. But I think Tuchel can do it when it matters. It's when we play probably against teams of our level where we're going to see a change. I'm just going to say no for now because I don't know what it looks like between here and 18 months. But I'm not blown away by the teams already, if that makes sense. So it could be up for grabs from anybody, and it could be just who doesn't perform the worst.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll end on a positive note. I think he will be the man to lift the trophy with England. I'm not saying 100% it's going to be the World Cup, but I think he'll do enough in that period and progress us enough to show there is something there. And I think he deserves as much time as Southgate got. And I think if he's given that time, he will be the man to lift a trophy because we know we've got an unreal squad. We know we've got the quality, and the quality does pretty much stack up with any team in the world. To your point, Reece, there isn't a standout. Spain were brilliant at the Euros, but this is a team with Alvaro Morata up front. Like, we've got to put things into perspective. They're not elite. You know, they had a great tournament, but they're relying on a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid. You know, Spain aren't, it's going to sound ridiculous, but Spain aren't that good. Like, they're beatable is what I'm trying to get at. And if we were tactically better in that final, we could have beat them.
We are more than capable now of going 1-0 up and shutting up shop. I think that's the difference, or going for the juggler and winning 2-0. I think we are better at doing that. I think we'll be more structured in that front. That's why I think he does get an advantage. But I do agree, I don't think the teams at the moment are mind-blowing.
Yeah, we've lacked tactically. That's what we've lacked. We've said it for years under Southgate. We have lacked tactically in big games, and Thomas Tuchel delivers tactically in big games. So that's the reality. So that's why I think he can do it. But it may take longer than the 18 months. But time will tell. That is a good way to end it. Football's coming home, we hope. But as always, make sure to put your comments below and let us know your thoughts and feelings around Tuchel and England. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill. Here we go.